What if I told you one royal marriage nearly destroyed an empire, triggered a continental war, and cost a young woman her life, all before she turned 24? She was born royal. She was promised a crown, but her marriage was a mistake so dangerous. History itself paid the price. This is the story of the royal marriage that should never have happened. Europe once believed royal blood was sacred, pure, divine. But behind palace walls, that belief became an obsession. An obsession turned into a curse. For centuries, one family married itself over and over and over again. Uncles married nieces, cousins married cousins. Bloodlines folded inward until nature itself began to break. And in the center of this disaster was a girl named Maria Antonia of Austria. Maria Antonia was born in 1669, inside the glittering Hofburg Palace in Vienna. On paper, she had everything. She was the daughter of an emperor, the niece of a king, a future queen of Europe. But what no one wanted to say out loud was that her parents were uncle and niece, and that wasn't unusual for her family. In fact, Maria Antonia wasn't just inbred. She was the most inbred royal child ever recorded. Her bloodline was so genetically tangled that scientists today say she was more inbred than a child born from a brother and sister. Yet somehow, she survived. Miraculously, Maria Antonia appeared healthy, quiet, serious, intelligent, but death followed her closely. Her siblings died one by one, some within hours of birth. Then, when Maria Antonia was only 4 years old, her mother died too, the palace dressed in black. And suddenly, the little girl became something terrifying, an heir, not just to Austria, but possibly to the Spanish Empire, the most powerful empire on earth. And that made her incredibly dangerous. Europe didn't fear Maria Antonia because she was weak. They feared her because she was female. Spain had never been ruled by a woman. The idea alone shook royal courts. So portraits were sent across Europe, paintings carefully crafted to make her look strong, calm, worthy. This wasn't art. This was propaganda, because Maria Antonia's destiny wasn't being chosen by God. It was being negotiated by men. Then her father made a decision that even by royal standards was disturbing. He planned to marry his 6-year-old daughter to her uncle, the King of Spain himself. Yes, uncle and niece. Again, even for the Habsburgs, this was extreme. The engagement was announced, a proxy wedding prepared, but something stopped it. Not morality, not love, biology. The Spanish king was too sick, too broken, to wait. So the plan collapsed, but the damage was already done. Years later, a new solution appeared. Maria Antonia was married off at 16 to Maximilian of Bavaria. On the surface, it looked safe, politically useful, genetically better. But this marriage was a disaster. Maximilian was cold, cruel, unfaithful. He humiliated her publicly, ignored her privately. She had been raised to rule, not to be discarded. And then came the pregnancies. Her bloodline caught up with her. Pregnancy after pregnancy ended in tragedy. Children were born lifeless. Her body weakened. Each loss wasn't just personal. It was political. Because without a son, the Spanish throne remained unstable. Europe held its breath. By 1691, Maria Antonia had had enough. Pregnant again, she fled her husband and returned to Vienna. For the first time in her life, she chose herself. And then, against all odds, she gave birth to a healthy son, Joseph Ferdinand, the child Europe had been waiting for. Celebrations erupted. Bells rang. Courts rejoiced. But victory demanded a price. Maria Antonia developed a postpartum infection. Today it's easily treated. Back then, it was a death sentence. Her fever rose. Her strength faded. And on Christmas Eve, 1692, at just 23 years old, Maria Antonia died. She never wore a crown, never ruled an empire. She left behind a baby and a ticking time bomb. Her son was declared the future king of Spain. Hope returned. Then, smallpox killed him. With his death, everything collapsed. When the Spanish king finally died in 1700, Europe exploded into war. The War of the Spanish Succession consumed the continent for 13 brutal years. Millions suffered. Empires fell. Borders changed forever. All because of one marriage. That should never have happened. Maria Antonia was never cruel, never greedy, never power-hungry. She was born into a system that treated blood like currency and women like chess pieces. Her marriage wasn't a love story. It was a warning. About obsession, about power, about what happens when humans believe they can outsmart nature. And in the end, History didn't remember her as a queen, but as the woman whose life proved that some royal marriages are too dangerous to survive.